This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
okay, they've just called. They said, how quickly can I get in for the scan?
Oh.
So,
Oh, she's got to go in for a scan, so we'll catch up with you later.
I'm just going to wash my
She's going to wash her
body off.
off.
And then I'm going to go.
And she's going to go.
Is that okay?
That's fine. So, good news. Lenny came back last night at 8 PM. She has just gone back in for another scan, but things are looking okay. So that's good. The baby's fine. Not here yet, obviously. But so yeah, I gigged. Thank you for everyone who kind of wished her well, by the way. Do appreciate that. I've gigged this thing for a couple of years. I before lockdown grabbed this because I had never tried one, and at the time I did a few kind of function gigs on bass guitar, and I needed something that would do, you know, like a bit of drive, a bit of compressor, pitch effects occasionally, and this sort of thing. And I thought the HX effects was pretty much perfect for that, and I used to use it in front of an actual bass amp. There are at least kind of two main downsides to the HX effects, and a couple of reasons that you might buy an HX Stomp or an HX Stomp XL before you bought this, or even a Pod Go for that matter. So it doesn't have an audio interface built in, so that might be a thing that you, if you use your HX Stomp or HX Stomp XL or Pod Go or existing multi-effect thing for recording audio, then the HX effects doesn't do that. All of the other Line 6 kind of modelers do. So this is a bit of an odd one out in that regard. Another thing is, and this is probably the main thing that you need to know, is that this doesn't have amp models in it, doesn't have the cabs in it either. It's got the ability to load IRs, but no amps, no cabs. And I think for me, one of the real things that I'm interested in Helix in general are those amp sounds, those cab sounds anyway, and it's what I use a lot of. So for that reason, the HX effects doesn't get a ton of use, but I did gig it on New Year's Eve, and I did that video about kind of a pedal board idea for 2023. And what I've been using is just the HX Stomp plugged straight out, and the input into the left and right here, and then use the output of this to go to the desk. And or in the case yesterday, whenever it was, New Year's, I also used a send here at the very end of the chain to go to the Line 6 Catalyst, which I was using as like just an amp, just going into the effects return of that, and it all worked really nicely. I think this, for me, is the best form factor of any multi-effect out there. Now you've got a nice kind of size to it, as well as having 8 foot switches, which is, I think, really, really handy. It's often been the case for me that I think, well, what else would I need a switch for? And if you do need other switches, I think you can plug in external ones as well, expression pedals, that sort of thing. And the scribble strips, I think, are invaluable for kind of actual gigging. The thing with the screens of the HX Stomp and XL, I really like them for editing on, but when I'm playing live, I can't really see them massively well. I don't know if that's the case for you as well. So what I tend to rely on are the lights of the foot switches, whereas scribble strips, for some reason, I think I get a little bit more use out of, because maybe you've assigned what is going there and you can see them properly. So I think for me, that's potentially, it's just a really useful way to see a little bit more about what is on that particular switch, rather than a pretty small screen, and when you're, you know, nearly 6 foot above it, you can't really see it terribly well, I find. So I think scribble strips, lots of buttons, and a nice compact form factor, for me, make this, I think, the best multi-effect form factor that I can think of. Now, I also really like the Helix ecosystem for the sounds of the reverbs, especially these days where you've got like the dynamic series, where you've got the dynamic plate, dynamic hall, dynamic room, dynamic ambience, and these were all made by a chap called Norm, who used to work for Lexicon, so knows what he's doing. What else I've been using it for? The poly pitch effects. These were made by the DSP Victoria team, who used to work at Digitech and did work for Digitech. For me, there's tons of useful stuff in the HX effects. The other things that I can do with the HX effects that I can't really do with traditional kind of pedal board setups and stuff is interesting routing stuff, and this is the preset that I was using here, whereas this Chase Bliss effect inspired thing, where essentially I have another path of audio which has a reverse delay on it, has a pitch delay on it, has some tremolo, and that's brought in by the effects pedal. I'll just show you that now. If you're wondering why you're going on about this, what's so good about this, what's really cool, so I've created a few presets here. I've got like a poly capo here if I want. And they've all got this chase bliss thing, reversing going on. But what I can also do is change presets and the looper continues, so I could go over to here, which is a slightly different preset. You notice that nothing was interrupted. I think that's the most easy way to actually manage to do some of this stuff. You know, I find using loopers without some of these scribble strips to be quite difficult these days. Once I've got used to the idea of having it there, you kind of have to learn it from a manual otherwise, whereas this, it's just like fantastic. As long as you kind of dig the sounds, I think that is an incredible form factor. Because I've got this at the end essentially doing my time-based effects and maybe pitch-based effects where I want them, I don't have to worry so much about like trails and all that sort of stuff and things dropping out, as well as, you know, using the looper and stuff. Not only that, but I can then just take this and plug it into the loop of a normal amp and have those same kind of helix effects that I like in the amp. So I'm not sure for sure whether I would recommend this over any of the other helix products though. So the only kind of negative versus this with an HX Stomp XL is that you don't have the scribble strips. And for live, that might be a real key use, but I think as well, I've been gigging the HX Stomp XL live for about a year. It's totally awesome. Although I'd like scribble strips, I think in some cases I'd rather have amps and cabs. So it's a bit of a weird product within the Helix line, like a little bit of the odd one out. But I think that in terms of if you're going to build a multi-effect, then give it loads of switches, give it some scribbles. I think it ends up being a really, really useful piece of kit. I don't like building the presets on here as much as using the screens of the HX Stomp or HX Stomp XL. I find that interface is a lot more intuitive, but it, for me, is still easier to dial in and, you know, build stuff than on some other things like maybe the Strymon timeline or things without any menu system. I find very difficult because you're always kind of looking down, you're thinking, well, what did that do again? I much prefer dialing in stuff with a menu system. I might be odd in that regard. I'm odd in plenty of others. But yeah, that was kind of, I just wanted to have a little quick chat about the HX effects, because it is a thing for me which I think is a little bit underrated in terms of how much it can do, quite a good price, and is also super, super, super gig ready, I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Cheers. Oh, if you want those presets as well, there are some HX effects presets that I have put together. There are more HX Stomp ones, but you know, if you want to try these, use the Gumroad link.